This is the result of about 40 plus years of work. We're about at Inspiration Point above Gore Canyon. This project came about using sportsmen's dollars and science-based wildlife management. And we have Colorado state animal returned to where they had been in the 1800s.
We stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us. I worked for 30 years for that legacy, that the people that are there have an opportunity to enjoy that wildlife and that it should be sustainable. My grandkids and their kids can see bighorn sheep. That to me is why we did it.
Reduced by poaching, predators, and a virulent epidemic, the bighorn was once thought doomed to extinction. Today, he is coming back.
The story of Radium is really the story of sheep across the West as populations diminished and then blinked out. Illegal hunting, habitat loss, disease issues, just about everything you name had an issue with sheep, and it was West-wide. Scientific-based wildlife management figured out those causes. A lot of research done by state wildlife agencies in the 60s and 70s tried to get at some of those issues and figure out how to treat them. Sheep might have been as low as 1,000 or 1,500 sheep in the state. We're on the Radium State Wildlife Area. We're right in the middle of a burn that was done in 2004 with the specific goal of improving the area in preparation for releasing sheep in the area. The idea was to burn the overstory of pinyon juniper and provide foods that sheep prefer, but also provide an open landscape that they have visibility corridors where they can avoid predators. And then in 2009, we had the opportunity to actually put sheep on the ground right here on this spot, and then everything came to fruition. I honestly had the thought that at this point forward, people will be able to see sheep in this country, and they hadn't for the previous 60 or 70 years. It was incredible doing something that might have a legacy that's going to outlive me and maybe even my grandchildren. This is a great example of science-based wildlife management being successful.
Colorado's a great place to live, and we've got this fantastic wildlife population, but we also have a bunch of people living here too. The people have an impact on that population, and you have to manage for the big picture. Without management, those populations can have huge peaks and valleys. The whole idea with wildlife management is to take those peaks and valleys out so that it doesn't become excessive where we have negative impacts and then it tips over and it crashes. And then it takes a longer time for that population to come back. Big example of science impacting management with bighorn sheep is the effects of parasites on the population. The sheep population was having a good lamb production, but those lambs weren't surviving to adulthood. The research was done to figure out what was causing the lambs to die before they became adults. A parasite called lungworm was isolated, and when a lamb hits the ground and has that parasite load, it can't overcome what happens to it, and then they ultimately die from pneumonia. That parasite load is a density-dependent impact on the population. If that sheep population has a big parasite load and the lamb production decreases, then that population decreases. So we need to manage that population at a lower level without that impact from the disease. You use hunting as a tool to reduce that population. I want the public to understand what goes into scientific-based wildlife management. I had a 30-year career with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, continuing that legacy of wildlife management. A state agency is restricted when something becomes involved politically. CPW employees are not allowed to take a stance on that, but they can provide information. When you go to the ballot box, look at the facts, be an informed voter. Go to the CPW website, look at what CPW is doing to manage bobcats and mountain lions. Trust that that agency is basing their management decisions on sound scientific research. Radium sheep is just a snapshot of everything that happens with CPW, and that's the kind of conservation that works for wildlife.